Hello and welcome to Steve McDonald's Arts and Crafts. Today I'm going to be using resin on a wooden box that I purchased recently. So please enjoy. This is the little box that I bought, and oddly enough it was only £4. I was really surprised with how cheap it was. And it is actually quite well made. And so what I want to do with it is I'm going to put a resin pour in here. And I'm going to then stain the sides and possibly do something with the insides to make it a little keepsake box. And at £4, if it doesn't work out, I'm not really too worried. I'm going to be using antique gold resin in these bits, and then the actual flowers themselves I'm going to be doing in a midnight blue with this tiny little bit in the middle as yellow. So there's going to be a lot of antique gold on here, which I quite like because it's quite a metallic colour for resin. But before I do that, what I'm first going to do is I'm going to cover it in masking tape, because I know how messy I am and I will spill it onto the raised bits, and I don't want that. So now what I'm doing is I'm using some acrylic paint to actually paint in where I'm going to be pouring the resin in the colours that I'll be pouring the resin in, because obviously that makes more sense than doing it a different colour. Now there's two reasons that I'm doing this. One is so I don't forget where I'm going to put what colour, and two, because it not only does it seal the wood as well and stops little bubbles coming up through it, through the porous wood, but it also seals around the edges, because box was only £4. I don't know how well this filigree top has been glued down to this base, so it should help that as well. And because I've covered it in masking tape and then cut that out with a very sharp scalpel, I don't mind about going over the top of the wood, because the masking tape's there. So now that's done and completely dried, I've mixed up my resin colours, and I'm going to be using a pipette to put it in with. And the reason I'm using a pipette is because I know I've mentioned this before in my other videos, but I do have a slight tremor, and it's easier for me to be more precise when using a pipette. And obviously I want to try and be as precise as possible. And what I also will be intending to do is, because when resin dries, it sometimes dries concave, and I really don't want it to be concave. So I want to be able to ensure that I can just put enough in that it's almost slightly doming, but not quite doming. So when it dries fairly flat. So that's the yellow that I've put in there, and obviously that's got mica in, because everything I do tends to have mica in. And now I'm moving over to the blue. And I have speeded this up quite considerably. I wish I could work at this speed, but unfortunately I can't. So I'm just steadying my hand there using that pipette, and now I'm using the corner bit of a palette knife, because where the resin is a little bit viscous, it doesn't always flow directly into those corners. So if you help it along a little bit, then what you'll find is when you put any more resin in it, it will actually fill into those corners quite nicely. And I'm not worrying about bubbles that I'm creating with this pipette at all. Now, a tip when using pipette, it does sometimes take a while for the resin to get into the pipette. So what I do is I often have a couple on the go when I'm using larger amounts of resin. I squeeze the top out, I let it draw the resin in, and while I'm using another one. It just really works well for me. So this is Midnight Blue. And again, thank goodness for that masking tape on the top. I really enjoyed it. It was quite therapeutic cutting all these little shapes out with the blade. So I've nearly finished those now. I'm just topping them up to ensure that they are as level as possible, and bursting any bubbles, because that can make the difference in the level as well. Once those bubbles gone, it leaves a bit more space. So now they've topped up, I'm going in with the antique gold, and I absolutely love how this dried. You'll see this at the end. It dried beautifully. And again, I'm making sure I get into all the corners and all the little ridges using the palette knife, and being careful not to overfill but not to underfill. So there we go, that's nearly all finished. I loved this little project. It came out so much better than I could have even hoped for. I think it will look lovely in the little girl's room or somebody's room with little keepsakes in. So there we go, there's the final one just being filled up, ready to allow this to cure for probably, I think I left this for about a day. Pop a few of those bubbles. So now what I've nearly pulled all the masking tape off here. I'm just going around and checking I'm not leaving any little bits. And as you can see, actually, some of the colours did bleed through this wood. I would have probably been better off sealing the whole thing with a sealing spray first before resining it. But hindsight's brilliant, isn't it? It's 2020. So there we go, that's it, completely finished, all dry, and I decided where those stains would be, I went over with a gold paint, and actually I'm really pleased I did. I really like how that has come out. So I want to put a top on this, a clear resin top, and unfortunately I didn't have anything to dam this off with other than sellotape, so I've used some sellotape, and what I'm doing is I'm ensuring that this sellotape is very well adhered to those sides, because I don't want any, I've gone to all this trouble, I really don't want any leakage getting through that sellotape. So I've got my resin mixed, and I'm now going to pour that through the middle and then help it get towards the corners and the sides. Now, when torching this, obviously with sellotape, because you don't want the bubbles in it, but when torching this, be really careful. So I had my torch on a very low flame so it didn't burn and melt that sellotape into the resin that was on there. So just take that into consideration when you torch any bubbles that come out of this. So just using up my last of my resin. And pouring that in. And now I'm going to start to move that resin around gently up to those edges. And I'm using a silicone brush here, but actually I don't think it was the right tool to use. It might have been better with just picking the box up itself actually, and moving it about to allow this resin to move out and find its own level. So there we go, that's the resin in there now. Now there doesn't appear to be that many bubbles here, but there will be a few, so I want to just double check that and ensure that I'm getting it quite clear of any bubbles that are potentially there. And as you can see, I'm trying to avoid that sellotape as best I can. Well, this is the box finished and dried, and as you can see, its sides are all finished. I'll try and zoom in now. You can see that there's a slight lip, and I've stained and varnished the sides as well to give them a bit of protection. And it's come out, I think, quite well. I really do like it. And if we look just onto the top, I'm getting a bit of light coming back. Let's go zoom right in. It's come out really well. I'm really pleased with it. I loves it. So I probably will be giving that to somebody to use as keepsakes in or something. So thank you very much for watching. Hope you've enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you soon. Bye. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe, like and share this video as much as you can to help my channel grow. Bye.